Go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for being here. I know you have in front of you the resident satisfaction survey. I know that the Haas Center does for us every year. I do know they will be coming to our either our agenda conference or our council meeting to present, as they always do, and go through all of that data. We certainly appreciate working with them, and we know the reputation that they have to make sure that the data that we get is reliable. It's not the mayor himself asking how the mayor is doing on his own survey, but we're getting a third party to make sure that we see what we're doing well and what our opportunities for improvement are, as we always should. So we had 1,504 city residents complete the online survey. And it was mainly online. You could also call in, if you recall, and there's some mail that went out. So 1,504, obviously a significant sample size, more than enough. And obviously the overall highlight, 70% of our citizens think that we're going in the right direction, which, is, I would say, is probably personally and as an administration, probably the number that you can get into all sorts of numbers, as you can see in that report, but that's what we want, is we want people to feel like they're going in the right direction. And so you might agree with one thing we do or disagree with another thing, but what we want is prosperity for everybody in this community. And so that question is important to me, and certainly something that we're going to ask for, and we appreciate it. It's a 3-point increase from last year. It was 67. And it was asked kind of in different ways over the years. We're going to keep it consistent while I'm here. So it's kind of hard to track. I know it's the highest, I believe, since 2017. So anyway, we're certainly honored that the citizens feel that way. Obviously, they've given some support, significant support. We asked about some of the big transformational projects like American Magic in Baptist Hospital. We asked lots of parking questions. 81% of our citizens support a discounted parking permit, which we are continuing to work on. That we're just wanting to make sure that when we roll it out, it works the way it needs to work. But we are 100% committed to city resident parking permits in some fashion in the city, because they are helping pay for infrastructure, unlike the folks who are not necessarily living in the city. So that wasn't too big of a surprise. We also asked the question if we need a $20 million parking garage. If we do long term, if we need a $20 million parking garage, would you rather it be funded through user fees of parking or be bonded on the city residents? And it turns out 88% prefer that we fund a parking garage through user fees and not just on the 55,000 city residents. So as the representative of those 55,000 residents, I felt an inclination that would be how they felt. And it's certainly how I feel, is that we need to help generate the infrastructure of the future for our city in the most efficient way possible for our residents. So some other favorable numbers. Again, you guys will be able to thumb through all that and can ask me questions today or next week. Pensacola International Airport, it was 78% favorable. Port of Pensacola 71, Pensacola Energy 68. Sanitation Services was 63% favorable, which was a 14-point improvement over the year prior. 311, this is something we're really proud of, certainly compared to where we were when I got here on 311, was a 53% favorable rating, which is 11 points higher than last year. If you recall, when I started here, we had more than 2,000 open tickets for service in 311, and we now straddle somewhere between 50 to 80. And so great work by Lisa and her team to overhaul 311 and really make it the asset that it's supposed to be, which is supposed to be convenient. You can call and get something done in the city, and we can now, and have been for a little while, been able to say that is the case. Public Works favorables are up. Again, doesn't surprise us that our law enforcement favorables for customer satisfaction, 98% favorable for fire service, 79% favorable for the police department. And then, of course, there's areas of improvement, none that are huge surprises, but it puts numbers to them. Residents want to see more movement on affordable housing. Gun safety remains the top safety concern at 42%. That number has dropped 10 points from the year prior, but that still remains, a big one. And we use this data like we do the strategic plan to help make decisions moving forward, and that's why it's valuable to me. So again, we appreciate the Haas Center and Nicole everybody there. And you guys will also get an opportunity, and our council will get an opportunity to have this reviewed at one of their meetings and be able to ask some questions as well. So again, I know you guys just received it, but either today, next week, or any time in between, any questions you have on that, I'm happy to answer those. ST Engineering, obviously last week you saw the announcement about the 200 positions moving from Mobile to Pensacola. I had another, since I told you we continue to have standing regular updates from them, what we're doing in the community, what we're doing in workforce. I had another one this morning, which had been scheduled. We do them about every other month now. One, I think, important note that I didn't see during this, I was out of town when the news had come out, and of course we had been briefed that this news might come out, and that's an improvement in and of itself, making sure that we're being communicated with and we understand what's going on. But I think one important detail is that 100% of the senior leadership has moved from Mobile to Pensacola. So as folks went to San Antonio and Pensacola, 100% of that senior leadership now will be working in Pensacola. And it'll probably be about a 6-month process in total. You'll see some real activity on that movement in the next 60 days. I'll let them obviously talk about how all that's going to work. So if you have any detailed questions, I'd defer that to Travis and their PR folks. But encouraging nonetheless that we continue to see that grow, and I think that's a good symbol and sign for us moving forward. Is it's not just any 200 employees, is that if they're moving the central brain of the operation of Mobile over to Pensacola, I think that's a good step forward for us, and certainly we want to support them every way we can, and we continue to do that. I facilitated a conversation between ST, our school district, and Career Source Florida, all the leadership at the state level where I'm on the board, to say how can we continue to push the envelope and make sure that we're getting our kids, our high school kids, an opportunity to make $80,000-$90,000 a year pretty quickly. So that work continues. Also, it hasn't been mentioned, I know there's a groundbreaking for Pensacola State, the A&P Mechanics School on April 7th. I believe that Monday. So we'll be breaking ground on the school on airport property on April 7th. Obviously, Pensacola State is running the groundbreaking. We're just a part of that, but ST leadership will be here. So that'll be obviously a big day for us, and a big day trying to, again, build careers and build quality of life for our citizens. I wanted to mention quickly also, just proud of our response for the scare at Corry Station. Certainly appreciate our PPD, Sheriff's Department, everybody involved, and obviously when something like that happens, it's all hands on deck, and these are not the ways you like to test things when you don't know that they're a test, but I'm very, very proud of our team, our SWAT guys, our PPD, and again, huge kudos to Chip, to Mama-san at NAS. We were in contact with everybody in real time about what was going on, and I just want to give my deep gratitude and appreciation to everybody involved there. We had a great debrief on Mardi Gras yesterday. All hands, police, fire, public works, EMS from the county, just to talk through some of the changes, what worked, what didn't work. Overall, our feedback has been fantastic. I had probably more citizens at a Mardi Gras stop me and say, I feel safer, whether it's the barricades, whether it's the extra block of buffer. I don't have a documented, I'm not trying to encourage them or anything, but I don't have a documented complaint necessarily yet, from a convenience standpoint. And so we look at opportunities. I think we're going to do a better job. Obviously, we had a short timeline. I'm so appreciative of everybody involved to make the adjustments on the fly, really. I mean, you think about, we're only talking about 60 days from the New Orleans situation. But what we promised was we'll also be taking a long-term look. And so we started to have the conversations on big and little things. Where should we have a coordinated area where food trucks are so they're not in the middle of the thing? I mean, everything is on the table for us to talk about, what some of those hits and misses were. But in the big stuff, in terms of safety, which is why we're doing this, we felt very good about where we're at, and you may see that continue to evolve. So we are not promising that it'll be exactly the same way that next year as it was this year, because now we got some runway to maybe look at some other things. But all in all, very appreciative of our team, and really appreciative of the citizens, for being patient with us and being very understanding of what the goal is here, and that we all have the same goal, which is to go to an event like that with your family and enjoy it with your family, and not feel like your safety is in question. So thank you to everybody for that. Our next phase of pavement maintenance work starts next week, weather permitting, and you've seen it around the city probably before. I've mentioned it before. We have that fund to go knock out, and if you knock out some of the trouble areas of our streets around the city, if you recall, we did a overall study with AI and camera technology of the condition of the roads, so we could get out of the business of whoever called us on 311 and said that my road needs to be fixed. That was probably the old way of the past, is to say, and then maybe we'd send a crew out there and we'd try to assess, and we'd either fix it or not fix it. We now have a holistic way to attack the major, most serious road failures issues in our city, and do it in a data-driven way. So you may see, if you go down Main Street, it's a perfect example. Not all of Main Street gets paved because we started Main Street. We might only do a couple blocks because of potholes, because of, on Cypress, I live in Sanders Beach. On Cypress, there's not even a block. There's probably about 30 feet that just was really bad. So it's nice to know that when we're rolling out there and we're investing the taxpayer money and fixing roads, we're doing it in a scientific way and trying to deal with the biggest issues first, regardless of where you live. It's not about where you live or who screams the loudest. We're following the data, and so that's been very helpful. The first roads on the second round include College Parkway from Langley to Airport. It includes Tippin Avenue from Rain Street to I-10. Hilltop Road from Langley Avenue to Buford Road, and then Lee's Way from Capri to Bonway. So a lot of that obviously kind of in the Cordova Mall, Langley, Scenic Heights area. We've completed 52 blocks in the last fiscal year, beginning in the southwest part of the city and moving towards the northeast. And the paving program does not include unpaved streets, state streets, county streets, parks, or private streets. So just understand, if you say, what about 9th Avenue? What about Garden Street? What about, we get lots of questions about state roads. Understand the FDOT has their own plan, and those are their roads to operate and maintain. So if we do have a major issue, we make them aware of that, of course. But those are not roads that we're going to go use city taxpayer money, because they're not city roads. I think that delineation is important, because I totally understand that citizens may not know the difference between a city and state road, but be mindful of that when you look at the list that we have. Last thing for me is the Mayor's Neighborhood Cleanup. Next one, March 29th, which is the area kind of northern East Hill, north of East Hill, with surrounding neighborhoods. Just make sure you check the map on the city website. You remember, because of the snowstorm, we had toggled some dates around. All of the other dates, including this one, should be as scheduled. So there should be no other adjustment to dates or anything like that based on delays. So if you've had March 29th circled because that was your neighborhood, then you still have it accurate. This should continue to be the same schedule. That is all I have, and happy to take your questions. Yeah.
Mayor, last week at the commissioners meeting, the discussion on the Bay Center seemed to stall out a little bit, because nobody knew, as they said, what the city was doing or thinking. And Commissioner May called for a joint task force, a meeting, some way to fix that lack of perceived knowledge. You've talked about this before.
Yeah.
What are the next steps for the city?
Yeah, I appreciate Commissioner May doing that. I think that's a good idea, and certainly appreciate being part of the conversation. As the county should be a big part, the city should be a big part. We're talking about a 9-figure investment, potentially, one way or the other, in high 8s, maybe 9, inside the city limits. And so I appreciate Commissioner May and the other commissioners supporting the idea of including us in that conversation. And what we all want is to get to outcomes. I mean, you know, what we don't want to do is spend, I can guarantee you, all 5 commissioners, all 7 city council members, I can speak confidently that we all don't want to dance around for 4 years talking about what we may or may not do. And the quickest way to clarity, I believe, is for us to all get in a room and let's try to understand what our needs are, what our concerns are. You know, I will say, for me personally, if we were to just start it at step 1, it's going to be hard for me personally to support anything ahead of the renovation of the Bay Center. Meaning, I think if we can all focus on common ground, there's lots of conversations about mixed-use sports facility, conference center, ice rink, all of that. And those are good conversations for us to be having moving forward. But what my goal would be, I think we should all look each other in the eye as community members, as county commissioners, as city council. And it's pretty hard to disagree. How many times have you heard me say, John? I mean, it's pretty hard to disagree that I don't think no one walks in the building and says, "Man, this is you know, the shining example of modern technology and infrastructure." So maybe that's a good common ground. Step 1 is to say, okay, well, if we all agree that before we build anything new, that we renovate the things that we have, these assets that we have, then to what intensity, how much? And then I think maybe that helps feed kind of the question 2, which is these other things. And so finding common ground and getting in the same room, I think, gets us to the clarity that you ask about. And so again, I think I appreciate that move, and certainly I plan on being personally involved in that. The city will be involved in any way that we can to work with the county and to work with all of our partners that are going to be, you know, potentially involved in making not just the vision for the Bay Center and the parking lot happen, but what happens around it. I mean, we're trying to be proactive at what could happen at the Grand Hotel, what's happening at the Tech Park. I mean, there's other, you know, empty property in and around there, and I hope that, and I would think that commissioners and council members are going to say, if we look back in 10 years at this point in time, that we looked at it holistically, that we did our research, and we did what we thought was best for the community. And so I think that is an important step 1 for us to get in a room and say, here's our concerns, here's what keeps us up at night, here's where I think what kind of direction that we should go. So I'm looking forward to that conversation.
So in the past, you've said first you wanted to hear what the residents of the city have in mind. Are you still, and how would that work?
Yeah, so I think if we can come to an agreement, and if the county is amenable to us, you know, whether it's a joint meeting, something like that, I think that takes precedent over before we would jump and do a city-only study. Now, we'll still survey it. You know, obviously, I'm not going to take a defined position on this type of facility versus that type of facility without, you know, you guys know me. I'm gonna survey it or measure it somehow scientifically to make sure that when I'm not speaking out of turn for what our citizens want. We've got a strategic plan. I think that helps, you know, feed it somewhat. But I want to ask more specific questions to our citizens. One I feel confident moving forward on that we probably don't need to survey is, how do you feel about the age and the infrastructure of the current Bay Center? So that's one I think I can go out on a limb and say that our citizens are ready for a new, more improved Bay Center experience. So I think the clarity that comes with a joint meeting and joint conversations it is exactly what our citizens would hope for, you know, and I think it's just it's the right step is for us to all say, this is too big of a project that will have too large an impact on multiple generations in this city for the county to do their thing and the city to do our thing. So if they're willing to meet with us, I think you know, we're going to turn our attention and our bandwidth to that, and then from there, we'll decide how we want to, you know, make sure that we're engaging the citizens.
Chairman Kohler said he wanted this to be on the workshop agenda for the first meeting in the commissioners in April. Pretty short time frame. And he said Commissioner May would be in charge of that workshop.
Yeah.
Do you think you can get there? Would a joint meeting have to occur before that? How would that work?
Yeah, I don't know. We haven't gotten into those details yet. I mean, a workshop, do I have to feel like that we've got everything figured out by then? I guess I would have to talk to Commissioner Kohler what his expected outcomes from that are. But I'm at the ready for us to have whatever. If they want to have it next week, then we'll have it next. I'll move things around and we'll have it next week. It's too important. The future of what happens in the middle of our downtown, in the middle of our city, is too important. So, we'll figure out how to make anything work. We're ready to work with the county. And again, I very much appreciate Commissioner May, Commissioner Kohler, and everybody else realizing what I think we all realize, which is for this to be successful, this cannot be done by financial pots of money or by that's not what defines the greater good for this community. We got to do it by all of us getting together, and I feel what I'll tell you is I feel very in private conversations and just general conversations in the community about that, conversations with commissioners, I feel pretty confident that we're all on the same page there, so I'm encouraged by that and certainly looking forward to that conversation.
So to follow up on that, is the city looking to bring CAR dollars to that conversation? Because it was the presentation given to the city council yesterday evening on the draft CAR plan included the Base Center as a demonstration project, some kind of rehab there. Obviously, if it's in the plan, then you can use CAR dollars to spend it. Is that, they mentioned that was a late addition to the plan, so is that what you are thinking?
Well, here, I feel like if the city's going to play a part in it other than it being in the city limits, then we should always approach that with an open mind about what, I come into whatever this meeting will be and what this conversation will be open-minded about, and I hope everybody feels that way. It shouldn't just be, here's how much county bond, TDT money there is, and this is all we can do. Well, who's to say that? I mean, what if this facility has a joint use? What if the glue that makes all of this happen is a parking garage, and we've got these parking revenues that help us fund infrastructure? Who knows? But it would, to me, it would be unfair to walk into a meeting and say, the only wallet in here is the one that we've been talking about in the newspaper. That's bed tax money, which is generated in the city and in the county. That certainly doesn't mean that isn't helped by the city, but we should all be coming into the room and saying, how can we be resourceful? And I think the best example of what you're talking about, Jim, is us trying to play some offense with the Grand Hotel. I mean, that's a perfect example. That's a private piece of property, and so CRA dollars. To your point, would I be willing to incentivize something happening there with CRA dollars? Absolutely. And that, I think that's for example, if I'm in meeting with the county commissioners, I think that's the conversation I'm having is how can we be helpful around here? Well, maybe the city's role is help and encourage something that's happening there, because I'm telling you, the success, what happens if we want the Base Center and we want anything else to go there to be successful, something's got to happen there. I mean, I wouldn't want to invest $100 million as a private enterprise in and around there with an empty hotel and right across the street that could help feed and compound the value of everything else happening. So just using that, we'll see where that goes, but I'm just using, to your question, an example of how can we get proactive and be participatory in trying to make the entire vision of this area, not just what happens at the Base Center, not just what happens in the parking lot, but what happens at the tech park, what happens at Grand Hotel. All of that should be part of this conversation, and if we can step up in any way where it makes sense for us to do it, then I think we should be open-minded. And if it makes more sense for bed tax dollars or bed tax bonding, then I'm sure that the county is obviously prepared to have that conversation as well.
Mayor, got our numbers for the red light camera violations.
Yes.
Just wondering, if you could talk a little bit about this, how they compare to before y'all were ticketing, if it's positive, negative, the same,
Yeah.
and just anything.
Yeah, sorry. I'm glad you reminded me. It was on here and I skipped it. I promised that I'd give you these. So we had 2,300 red light violations in February. That's about 82 a day. About 2% of those 45 were PPD officers had canceled out. The worst, as it was when we were testing it, as it was in January during the warning period, was 34. The worst intersections, 9th and Bayou. 34% of the violations were happening at 9th and Bayou. And anecdotally, the last time I was at 9th and Bayou, I was waiting to turn left, going by Publix. The one time I've sat at this intersection, probably since I've been talking to you, someone blew right. I mean, red at Publix and was just blew right through the light. I'm 1 for 1 in witnessing that intersection of someone blowing through the light. And then you've got the breakdown, about 20% at 9th and Fairfield. And understand, 19.6% at 9th and Fairfield, that's only the one, approach, or, the 2 approaches of the 4. It's half the size. So that's pretty significant. I feel the same way I always feel. 2,300 violations is alarming, and one, I think it validates why we're doing this. And I continue to maintain anybody who thinks that this is if you look at the financial breakdown of the ticket, this is not the most financially. When the conspiracy theory is floated out that this is a financial decision by the city, if it was a financial decision, we would just send officers out there and write a ticket that's about twice as much, and not be sharing revenue with the state and vendors and everything else. So, the notion that this is something that is a financial decision. What I want is 0 of these. I want to say I made a poor financial decision and I paid all these vendors to put cameras in, and they're coming to me for a bill. That's what my number 1 goal. And if we can't do that, and we can't be responsible neighbors, and we can't worry about the livelihoods of our families and our neighbors and our kids of this community, then we'll use the revenue that we have to try to improve that. Whether and use whatever revenues come in to only enhance, as my commitment is, public safety. And so if you're going to break the law here, we're going to use the revenue from you breaking the law here to ensure improved public safety for the people who abide by the law. So it's definitely discouraging to see 2,300 violations in a month at 4 intersections. I mean, that's an alarming number, but it also fuels why we're doing this. And I think if anybody said that this isn't a problem or this is one we're manufacturing, then I'll take whatever explanation they have about why we have 2,300 people running through lights at 4 intersections in our city. Because I can't figure out anything else other than I think we've identified a real problem. And these are, I can only imagine what the numbers used to be at these intersections. What do you think they used? I mean, we know when we tested it, it was testing over 100 a day. But who knows what these were 2 years ago, 3 years ago. They're certainly higher than this. And how much higher? Were they double? Were they triple? I mean, who knows? We might have had someone running every turn of the red light at these things. So it's a shocking number, no doubt. But it only instills more confidence in us that we're going the right direction to improve public safety, and that we're doing the best that we can. And we'll continue to monitor it and see if I expect these numbers will go down. This is the first month of people receiving traffic tickets, and I certainly hope that that's the case.
Well, it seems like Gregory and 9th has gone up. I mean, just looking at, I've got the January numbers, and it was 345 through the 27th, and now it's 627.
Yeah, and if you go by just approach, remember that's one approach. So I mean that's probably the single worst intersection by volume is 9th and Bayou. The single worst approach by volume is the on-ramp of I-110. Right. And unfortunately, I think people think the on-ramp begins before the light. It's actually after the light is where it starts to elevate. And I think that proves it. 627 people blowing through one approach in a month, and 28 days in a month, by the way.
So it's almost comparable to January. So you're having more,
right?
Than having less.
Yeah, and so for example, again, if the theory is we don't want anybody to know about it, they're marked. We've ensured that they're on Google Maps. They're all, so if somebody's on a GPS, if they're from out of town, like you do anywhere where they have these, it notifies the driver. That we are keeping no secrets about this. All we want is 0 people to run through the red light. That's what we want. And we're again trying to notify folks the best we can. But if this isn't a stark illustration of a problem, then I don't know what is. I don't know how much more we could be hit in the face with that we have a major driving issue here. What I appreciate is some folks have given us some feedback that said, hey, just the fact that we know that you've put these in at 4 or 5 lights has made me more cautious at other lights, even if maybe I'm 10% not sure if you put one there or not. Good. That's what we want is, and that should be the net result of this, is that people are a little more cautious when they're driving and making sure that they're not running through the red light.
But it's not working.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got 900 more violations than you had in January.
Well, listen, certainly, I understand the media world, because it's new, there's lots of attention around it. And in the grand scheme of life, 1 month is not going to tell the tale. It's a striking number. But, if I'm sitting here in February of 2026 talking about 2,300, now we got a real problem. But
I'll check back with you.
right, exactly, or next week, depending on y'all's appetite for it. But no, I mean, obviously, in the grand scheme, this is the first month that we've been writing tickets. Only the second month. Yeah, second month we've been aware of it. But let's see what happens. And I think yes, the hope would be as we get into March and April, May and June, that we see this number go down. I think even that might be a tall order. You got visitors coming in, you got, in the summer, you got folks coming in that may not be aware. It's probably, to be honest, it's probably going to take close to a year from an awareness standpoint of overall red light runners. But hopefully our residents are the ones figuring out in the March, April, May, June. They should be finding out pretty quickly, and certainly you guys are letting them know about it. So, and we appreciate that.
You don't have any breakdown on out of town versus local drivers?
No, I'm not even sure if we can give that. We can look into that. Obviously, there's no data point I'm not interested in seeing, but certainly. So, like for example, we look at that with parking transactions. We have every county in the country mapped out of where someone transacted a parking thing, but that's a little different than from a security and a license plate standpoint. I'm not sure. I could maybe check with Mike at PPD and see if that's even something that we can give out. I would defer to him on that.
Well, do you want to go, John?
Good.
So Mayor, tomorrow, Harold Dawson and Emmett Smith's Lot 5 project comes up
Yep.
for the first formal city review, one of two they're scheduled to go through before they have to pull a building permit September 1st, I think, of this year, according to the lease.
Yep.
My question is, who is the approval authority for a live local project within Pensacola? The state statute says the municipal planning authorities have that approval. Florida Housing Management Finance people, they just approve the ratios.
Yeah.
So are you the formal?
Well, obviously, it would be our planning department. We have experts in our building that have read and understand the rules, and we'll make sure that those are adhered to. That's to the extent. And I don't know that it's a personal decision by me. I think we're going to make sure that whatever project, whatever the live local.
The law doesn't leave the municipality much to approve.
Yeah.
What are the things that you think you have some authority over?
Well, I haven't been focused as much on that. Again, I've got extreme confidence in our planning department that has been with them every step of the way, and meetings every step of the way to ensure that that they understand the rule and that it's going to be adhered to. At the end of the day, it should be self-policing in the fact that you're not going to get the abatement through the state unless you're meeting those requirements. So again, obviously that isn't something I'm micromanaging from every step of that, but our planning department's aware. We know because for them to go as tall as they're going to go is a prerequisite of live local. So I got full confidence in our team that we're on top of that, and in fact had a phone call with Marina Corry, who we have hired to make sure that we adhere to the West Main Master Plan. We're not asking her to be a second architect to the project. We're saying, our council cares about making sure we meet that. Our citizens who gave that feedback care. So she is actively involved with Gensler, with the Dawson Group, as this moves forward, and giving her feedback. And good conversation with her yesterday. Obviously, what they're working through is that ground floor activation. You remember during that conversation is how do we figure out how to have a parking garage, for it to self-park, but also stay activated on the ground. And I'm no architect. I'm going to let them figure that out. But But we have a representation in the room as it pertains to the West Main Master Plan. So so she said that the conversation, Dennis and on Dawson's team as well as Marina have said that that's gone very well, and they continue to narrate that and be in constant communication to make sure that the West Plain Master Plan is respected. So that's where we are right now, and we'll see how the meeting goes.
We understand the city's losing a $1 million Arbor grant. It was a federal grant that was cut. So what's the plan? What was funding, or what was that funding with other options and any other grants or funding that may also be cut? Or
Yeah, so it was urban forestry grant. Obviously that was going to be it's $1 million in total. About I'm going off memory. About $700,000 of that was going to be for helping restore the canopy within the city, urban tree canopy. So certainly unfortunate news. I'm co-signing a letter with a few other mayors around the country, through U.S. mayors that are in the same situation, and explaining what exactly that it's for. Depending on, I'm not going to speculate on what the mission or the thought was about canceling that, or why that was felt at the federal level, why it wasn't important. But we can certainly state our case of why we think it is, and let the chips fall where they may. But that's the only notification we've received from a grant standpoint. Obviously, when I was in Phoenix at the last U.S. Conference of Mayors Leadership, that was the largest topic of conversation, is the uncertainty around that. And we had a call, the President Trump's liaison to cities and counties was on with us, and talking through some of that. There's a lot of moving parts right now. I'd like to feel pretty confident that if we've signed a contract with the federal government, that we do what we say. And so, these grants like Hollis T. Williams, some of these that where it is fully executed, I would hope, regardless of how, the administration may feel or not feel about, a previous administration's decision, that we do what we say we're going to do when we sign a contract. So we get that. We have a reasonable level of confidence about that, as mayors, but we'll see. But we continue to move forward. We are not slowing any project down. We're not, we're not timid about continuing to move forward with all of the amazing grants work that our grants team has put in. So from Fricker Center to Hollis T. Williams to Brownsville to Baptist Hospital, all these other grants that we have, we just are full steam ahead at this point, and until we would be told otherwise.
Mayor, we're in the selecting design build for Hangar 4, the project type. Do we have all the funding set up for that yet?
No, where I'd left it with ST is, again, this is a funding stack that was set up 9 years ago.
Right.
And as we all know, the price of construction, the price of everything else, post-COVID, this was obviously established pre-COVID. So to no surprise, what you thought a hangar was going to cost in 2016 isn't what it costs in 2024. So we've had some conversations with ST. I believe the intent would be to build a modified version of that. I'm going to speculate and say a smaller version of that. And to try to maximize, the job count and the productivity. What we know ST does not have is a demand issue, in terms of having customers. UPS, United, if they had an open hangar tomorrow, it would be full. So the demand is there. So we're certainly not concerned about that. But I think we're going to just extract everything that we can out of the existing funding at this point. But in terms of myself or somebody approaching any new funding for it, that's not something we're entertaining at the moment.
Moving ST closing Mobile, does that help you in negotiating with them as far as maybe them putting in more money into the project?
Yeah, potentially. Look, I'm not expecting the 200 jobs. At the end of the day, they have a job requirement. Now, will that job requirement have to be modified if you have a smaller facility? Perhaps. We haven't had that conversation, but I'm assuming if you've promised 1,700 and you have, half a less a hangar or whatever, you're not going to be able to have, create as many jobs. So that, at some point down the road, not today, but some point down the road, obviously that's going to be a conversation to say, can we still hit those numbers? But, listen, we've talked about it. I've been pretty clear with them that I'm not really going to be, whether it's the Bay Center, whether it's anything else, I'm certainly happy to participate. But I expect other participants, and so if we're going to see anything, if we're going to ever get back to what the original 2016, 2015, whatever it was, size of Hangar 4, there's going to need to be some lifting outside of the city or request by me.
Those jobs in Mobile are going to go somewhere. We're going to be competing with San Antonio
Right.
for that Hangar 4. Those jobs that would come with that.
Yeah. Well, let me back up and say, if there's anything that we can do to make whole Hangar 4 or to increase jobs or build an extra bay on Hangar 4, I mean, whatever the case may be, we are. I think we've shown this is not a project that started with me. This isn't a project that continued with me. I'm coming in and trying to make sure that we've got oversight, we understand what's going on, and that things are implemented. So I've been handed this project, and I feel very confident that myself and our team has done the best that we can to continue to not only manage the relationship, but get it probably in a better place than it was with all of COVID happening and kind of, as I always say, kind of losing quarterback. Who's the quarterback at the community level to make sure that this project's successful? Because we need a quarterback, but so do they. They need somebody to be able to communicate with, and they should have that expectation of us. That I don't want it to sound like I'm not willing to. I'm happy and willing to listen to any outside the box idea or creative thinking or anything I can do to help support their effort. I'm happy to do that. But if we're $30-40 million short of a hangar, I don't see that burden being primarily on the city or on other revenue streams. I think because if the demand is there, like you said, it probably will work itself out, right? I mean, they should see the value in that, and for the last few dollars in, I'm okay with that. I don't know about the first 80%. So we'll see how that goes. But again, had a great call with them this morning. I'm as confident right now in our transparency and our communication. I would probably put it up right now with as good as it's been since this project started. In terms of the city, I can't speak for other organizations, but I think we've got a good cadence. We understand what our expectations are of each other. In that report this morning, they continue to be at their expected numbers of job creation. They are not lagging behind. They've sent that into the state. We see those enhanced reports now more than we used to see. So I feel very good about where we are right now and where our relationship is right now.
Mayor, going back to the tree grants, was that grant being run through the Arbor Day Foundation?
You're testing my memory. I want to say it was through forestry. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think it was through forestry. So obviously, there's some of the advocates were helping us try to get a letter, put through in support of it, and given that explanation, we can get that explanation of what we're sending to the administration.
I asked because the Tampa Bay Times reported this week that they lost about $1 million grant down there, but it was going through the Arbor Day Foundation, and the Trump administration said it was because the project fell under a DEI initiative. Mm-hmm. And I know the grant was planning urban forestry. Did y'all get any?
We can dig up that. As I said, when it was hitting my desk, my understanding I think it was through forestry, but whether that's the same thing or some kind of joint, I'd have to look. That might be coincidental or might. I don't remember Mayor Castor's name on that letter, but that's also going off memory. I know Mayor Turk in Allentown was on it and some others, but there were about 4 or 5. But we can get you that too. I mean, I'll send you a copy of the letter. And what was asked for specifically is giving better detail exactly how we're going to use it and how we position it. At the end of the day, this isn't about acronyms and all of that. To me, what it's about is, in the city of Pensacola, when you live inside the city limits, the sidewalk is 10 to 15 degrees warmer than it is in other places of the city, period. I don't care. If I'm walking on it, if a child, a grandparent's walking on that sidewalk, it's hotter because we have killed out the tree canopy. I think we can all agree on that, that if we could have, it's better for our environment, it's better for our power bills, it's better for lots of things. Certainly, we'd love to see that revived. We'll see what happens, but I'm sorry, Jim, I'm not positive it's the same thing, but we can look into it.
Mayor, just scanning through the survey here while you've been talking. Our audience would be real interested in criteria by district. I notice you've broken out district responses, but there's nothing in here about district preferences, how each district looks at different projects, initiatives. Will that be available? Is it available?
I'm assuming so. I have not gotten it. We call it crosstabs, where you could crosstab everything based on race, based on age, based on district. That's a simple math calculation, so I would imagine, but probably in that version, crosstabs is probably 1,000 pages, because by the time you cross everything, or it's certainly hundreds of pages. So, I'm good. Going off memory, it was available last year. There's no reason it wouldn't be available. We probably just didn't want to. We're talking about saving trees over here, and now you want us to kill a few trees with that 500 pages. But no, we'll get it to you.
Just a few keystrokes.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Welcome to 2025. We can just email it to you. But I have not personally seen them come in, and sometimes it's not uncommon for the crosstabs to be delayed because of how much it is to process. But we'll get those to you as soon as we have them.
To follow up on the survey, and you were talking about this at the beginning when I came in a little bit late. Jason already told me I lost 5 points for coming in late.
Yeah, you did.
The city parking permit for residents, is there a specific plan to implement that, or what are the? Yeah,
we're just having. Weight number one is on the back end software, because the last thing I want to do in a touchy subject is bring something out that isn't working properly, right? I'd rather wait another month and make sure that the permits themselves are working correctly. So we've been running through some complications outside of this building on that, with vendors. So that's really the primary delay. We're starting to have the conversations of how to do it, but we want the operation to work. And for example, we're talking about 1,800-ish spaces, and so we have 20,800 households. So how do you manage that? And so someone can make a very simple, easy case to say, hey, I'm a city resident, I pay taxes. Should it be free? Should it be $5 a month? Well, we have 5% of the number of spaces that we have households, not people, households. So you can't do that, right? So now we've got to figure out, then there needs to be some nominal cost. So at least the only people that would be claiming them are actually using them. It's not just taking it for the sake of taking it. Well, what is that cost? You go too high, then you're saying, well, then you're not really helping city residents. So these are the conversations we're having as we're trying to right-size price. There will be a significant difference in price for a city resident than someone who doesn't live in the city. And as my Gulf Breeze and Pace friends remind me, when they talk about parking, I can tell you I'm usually unashamed in saying, well, we've got to get tax revenue from you somehow, because you're using our parking, you're using our infrastructure, you're coming downtown, we appreciate it, but you may, if you make the decision, if your decision to live in the next county is education-based, because of the school system, if it's those other things, that's well within your right. But one of the cool things we have going in our county is we've got a vibrant downtown, and we have some people paying for it and some that aren't. So we'll definitely have different pricing for city residents versus non. But we're also going to probably go even more granular than that. We're going to, more than likely, we're going to end up with kind of here's a 9 to 5, and don't hold me to those hours, but kind of a day pass. If you work downtown, even if you don't live downtown and you work, we make it easy for you. And then we might have a night pass, and we look at a night pass as kind of our best solution, most realistic solution to the hospitality conversation that always bubbles up, where someone says, well, why don't you give parking permits to all of the folks that work in hospitality? I sympathize with that. My downtown business experience is 100% hospitality, so I understand. But I also understand that people come and go in hospitality quite often. And just giving passes, a big stack of passes to the owner of Perfect Plain Brewing Company isn't going to solve our problem. How do we verify those? So that's it sounds nice in theory and gets a lot of people excited, but there's not a realistic solution that would allow us to do that. So one way to do that, to your question, is maybe we do a 7 to midnight pass, or maybe we do it only on the weekends where it's a little harder to act. Monday, Tuesday, you might be all right, and walking a block, and maybe Friday, Saturday, it's more difficult. So that is what, in tandem, concurrently with trying to get our back end done, we're looking at the question that you're asking, which is how do we do this? We do not have 20,000 paid spaces. I like to remind people 70% of our spaces are still free. We're not trying to increase our inventory of paid spaces. So how do we do this in the right way that can help meet all of our needs? But what I'll tell you is the spirit of bringing permits rests primarily with our city residents. So that is what my focus is how do we, the folks that are paying property taxes, that are helping pay for infrastructure downtown, that we make it as easy as possible and as cost friendly as possible for them. And so work in progress, but we're trying to figure out how to right size all that, and we're looking at other communities, and Lisa's been doing a lot of work on that. I actually have kind of I think we're pretty close to having our first general conversation about what those different iterations might look like.
So any idea of when that could actually roll out?
I need to get an update on that. I mean, I've got general urgency to get it done, so I can tell you that. But I'd hate to say it's going to be April 1st or May 1st at this point, because the main hurdle to that is something out of our control a little bit. So, if it takes too long, the back end to get it right, there is kind of a bailout option of doing it in a much more basic way, and maybe it's only, maybe it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in these certain zones or something like that. I don't, but I'm still kind of hanging on to hope that we can get it run out in a robust way, exactly the way we want it. But we aren't going to wait forever on that. If we've got to do kind of a step up to that, and then we will. So when I have this next meeting, I'll have a little more clarity on that timeline.
On parking, Mayor, I noticed here recently the New World Landing proposed hotel was
Yep.
asking for more LTUs on the street.
Mhm.
I'm not sure where that one stands, but the big thing is the city was updating the LTU
Yes.
policy. How does that stand?
Yeah, it's good. So we actually, I think we just inked the largest revenue stream by multiples for our annual parking in the history of the city, which is what we said we would do. I want to say it's 2,200 a space, something like that. I'll go back and look and understand 1 block away in almost every direction are 1980s and 1990s, 2000s LTUs that were $250 for 20 spaces for the year. That's what we wanted to get corrected, and we've even gone to those existing folks to kind of let them know that that's going to be changing. But yeah, that was really the first example of us getting that inked. Now remember, on Gregory Street, that was kind of the spark of this conversation, the hotel that was going at 13th and Gregory. Their situation's a little different in that they've got some pretty significant expense that they're going to take on even to build those spaces. They don't exist. And by memory, maybe $250,000. So we factor all of those things in. So the end result is that we now have a process that says, here's what we believe these spaces are worth, whether you're in the paid district or you're not. Remember, 2 different really scales. And then they work with Lisa to say, all right, well, we're investing this amount, and we work with them. So it won't always be the exact same number because every circumstance is different. How many spaces do they already exist? Or are they building them? Are we building them? There could be a million different scenarios. But we kind of understand what we believe the value of these spaces to be, and it's now the developer's obligation to prove to us that if it's going to be less than that, that's okay. Just we've got to be able to defend that to council and defend that to our citizens.
So this still has to go to council?
I think it already did. Amy, did it already go to council, the LTU for 600 South? I believe it did. Yeah, I could be wrong, but. Yeah, it was recent, the last maybe.
The policy.
Oh, no.
Specific request.
No, I don't know or if that even needs to. I think it's an administrative policy, but
Maybe you can get a fact sheet or something.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because that's a big number.
Yeah.
You just quoted.
But remember, and we'll get the exact number. Don't hold me to that. But I mean, it's in the thousands versus $250 for a whole section of spaces. So, and listen, the fact sheet's going to be pretty short because it's going to ultimately say, here's what the city believes the market value of these spaces are. But then again, every situation is different. If someone came in and said, we're going to invest $10 million in a low barrier shelter, and we're going to do this and do that, and we need 5 parking spaces, I think we might give them to them for free. So it just, every situation is dependent on what but it's now the obligation's on the developer to come defend why they should pay less than that or why they should pay nothing. It should be where I can now come to you and I can come to the council and defend why they're paying what they're paying. That's what's different now versus there just being a number from the 80s that we stick on every parking LTU. And it's also being run through parking. That's another big, it used to be run through planning. So the parking LTUs are now run through parking, which I think makes a lot more
Pretty
sense.
soon you'll afford the garage.
Right, yeah, well, exactly. We, and that keeps chugging along too. So we'll, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, we can get you kind of a, fact sheet of how we've come to that number.
When this first came up a year or so ago, the city distributed, here's where the LTUs are.
Mhm.
Here's the location.
Yep.
Here's here's when it expires, here's what it pays.
Yep.
I think if this is a major change, update, then maybe update that spreadsheet too.
Yep. Yeah, and we took on a lot of those. I'll get, we'll get Amy and Lisa to give you an update on that, and Sherry on some of the previous ones. But there were some examples of where there's like driveways to we saw it all. There were driveways to residences that we gave an LTU. Well, and it was $10, or whatever, $25, and then they hadn't paid in 20 years. We were just giving it. It's 3 feet. It's already. They can't get in their driveway without it. There's very weird scenarios that had played out in this LTU thing over time.
The public interest in this was previous extensions of previous grants. There was a smell of favoritism
Right.
involved. And I think what the public would be looking for is we level all that.
Yeah. Well, and the public should expect from me that I can defend any decision that we make, and that's the way I operate. Is to say it doesn't mean we always agree on it, but they should. The expectation is that here's what a parking space costs. Come tell me why you shouldn't pay this, or you should pay less, or what you promise, or what you commit to. If someone came to us and said we're going to put in 10 space, we've had this proposal. It didn't go through, but on a street in town there was an office building being renovated, and they said, "Hey, we'll put in 10 parking spaces in this media at our cost. If you'll let us keep 3 of them." That kind of scenario. So that's why a sheet's not going to be very definitive, other than what we believe the market costs to be, because every situation is different.
Consistency on Palafox Street, though. I think that's probably the area that you've got the most apples to apples.
Right.
Supposedly, it's not apples to bananas now.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
I think that's probably the area that people can see it.
Yeah, and exactly, and also and that's why you'll see when we put a market cost or rate on the parking spaces, why we have an A and a B, right? Because if someone says we need right away on 13th and Gregory, completely different scenario than if you need it on Jefferson or on Palafox or something like that, and that dirt that the taxpayers own is worth more money for a parking space, and so we should treat it that way, and that's what we're doing. So 2 different scenarios is do you want an LTU kind of in the outside the paid district, or do you want an LTU in the paid district?
Right.
Is a clear delineation of cost and everything like that. So we'll get you that. You can check that action item, but we'll get that to you. And I don't want to misquote, but for the first time, we're going to an LTU and we're saying you owe us several $1,000s a year, or over a certain amount of time, because that's what it's worth.
Probably my last question, but on the survey, it had the initiatives broken down by favorability, unfavorability,
Yeah.
American Magic, and so they were all favorable, but the 2 that had the lowest favorability was the Baptist Hospital and the reimagination of Palafox
Uh-huh.
Street. Why do you think those had the lowest scores?
That-
52%?
I think if you took the names off of any projects, the ones that are in the earliest stages that have the least certainty are going to always be a little less favorable, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. So what'll be interesting to see is as they move forward. So take American Magic. Well, American Magic's the building's being worked on. It's pretty much everybody understands what it is. It's been talked about for a long time. So that doesn't surprise me. It's not like we're going to look at that and say. And again, I don't. You'll have to tell me. I don't remember off the exact number off memory, but it's not, to be clear, it's not like they're wildly unfavorable. They're just not the huge favorability extent that American
Yeah,
Magic and
the other ones are in the 60%. American Magic's 69% is the highest.
right.
But the Baptist Hospital is 54% and the Halifax Street 52%.
Yeah.
So
And so again, when it's early, you haven't had a chance to narrate what it is. I mean, we're not even at 100% design on Palafox. And of course, Baptist Hospital, we know, you guys have well documented, we're kind of, we're not at that stage yet where we're engaging the community and all that kind of stuff. But so, those are two big front-facing projects that are probably, kind of in not quite mature yet to the point where everybody understands it, knows what it is. I mean, anecdotally, I'll use Palafox. There's a lot of misperception out there that dollars that are used on Palafox could just be used for homeless reduction. Well, several $1 million are coming from FPL that are tied to the repair of that road. I mean, that those dollars can't just move anywhere they want. So that's natural in the evolution of not, as it gets started, as we talk about construction, and folks get more engaged and educated on the issue. I would expect those numbers to go up, but we start testing it because that's what's interesting to see, right? Let's see what they say next year, especially with Baptist, which is going to be a multi-year, multi-mayor probably project. See how people continue to evolve and if they're appreciating what's going on, and so a lot of times some of the questions you'll see us ask aren't just for open and shut this year. It's kind of to help us set the cadence of, are things going well, so we can go back and fix something or communicate better perhaps on those issues if we feel like folks don't fully understand it. That obligation's on us too. It's not just on the citizens. I'd love to, make them sit down and watch every press conference I do. Don't get me wrong. But people have jobs and lives, and part of our duty, and certainly why I come in front of you guys to help us out every week, is to help cascade that information as best we can. So yeah, we'll continue to monitor that. Anything else?
Mayor, I want to follow up. This survey has opened up quite a few interest items here. The respondents indicate that 26%, by a large group, that hospitality and tourism has the greatest potential to grow Pensacola. But yet, all research and all data indicate that's the lowest paying sector.
Mm-hmm.
How would you square those responses to the fact that people don't value manufacturing, aviation, and aerospace as much as they think that tourism?
Well, I mean, listen, that's the beauty and sometimes the baffling nature of a survey. I'll give an example. It depends on how you ask it. I mean, yes, you're right. Do you want high-paying jobs or low-paying jobs? Hospitality is not going to rank above aerospace, or it's not going to rank above manufacturing. But if the question's framed as what's most vital, what's the compounding impact of tourism and hospitality? Man, you talk about something I wish our citizens understood, not just complaining about traffic or about whatever, but folks who don't have a college degree or high school degree. We have a significant number of folks who live in the city who are city residents that rely on putting food on the table because of hospitality, number one. And number two is, it's not just the jobs themselves. It's, imagine if tourism went away. And I remember the number, this was actually during the SCAPE process when they had a placemaking economist, James Lima was involved in it, come in, and he came and evaluated what our ocean economy, the diversity of our ocean economy. So they used the example of New Orleans, and that about 46% of their economy, huge tourism town, 46% of their economy was tourism. And whereas a huge chunk of it was the ports, the manufacturing, all that stuff. And ours was 93%. And they're like, well, that's generally great, but if you have an oil spill or if you have COVID, then all of a sudden the diversification of your ocean-based economy is not so good. But I would say it's not just about the issue with the high-paying jobs. Is what would our community look like without the tourism that we have coming in, and how that affects every restaurant, every small business that might be high-paying jobs, might not be high-paying jobs. I can tell you there's a big misnomer that hospitality in the bar and restaurant sense doesn't pay well. I've run a lot of pay stubs over 5 years. I still have all the boxes from IRS in my garage. I can tell you there are lots of folks in hospitality making significant money in this city, and that's a great thing. I mean, through tips and through everything else. And where's that coming from? That's fueled by having good tourism. So, it depends on how you look at it and how you ask it. But, I do think hospitality is vital to our success, and there's no doubt about that. So. All right. Thank y'all. Appreciate it.